Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. A quick little invitation to all of you IB Economics students to head on over to my website, bradcartwright.com, a website designed to help you improve your scores in IB Economics, whether that be on an in-class quiz, a test, or ultimately the IB exam. So if you want some more information, check out the description box below. And other than that, enjoy this video. All right, so here's where we start. And like I've said in all my videos, like you got to figure out where the story starts. And this story starts with the basic supply and demand diagram. If you don't know how to draw that, check out the video above this of how to draw the basic supply and demand diagram. It's the basis of all the diagrams that you will face in microeconomics. And before I go on, I also just want to say thanks to Alba from Bolivia for putting in a request for this how to draw diagram, how to draw the subsidy diagram. It was her request that led to me putting this video together. So thanks, Alba. All right, so here's the deal. When you sit down to write, or you sit down to answer any of these questions, think about where the story begins. Well, in this case, the story begins with the market for corn, right? Price, a currency, P1, 0, Q1, the quantity of corn or whatever product it is, thousands of bushels, whatever unit you think's best, the year, D1, S1, and of course the market for corn. And in this case, what's going to happen is that the government is going to get involved, right? So a subsidy, per unit subsidy, is a decision by the government to incentivize or to provide funding for suppliers. So a subsidy diagram is always going to affect the suppliers and shift this curve outward. How do we know that? Because here's the best place to look. Right here on the vertical axis, right? If the government gets involved and lowers, this right here is the minimum price that anybody, let's say this is in the United States, anybody in the United States can produce corn for. So if the government comes in and provides a per unit subsidy per bushel of corn to all suppliers of corn in the United States, then the minimum amount that it costs for someone to produce corn is going to drop. By how much? By the amount of the subsidy. So let's just say that this is like, I don't know, $3 per bushel of corn, okay? So all you need to do then is go, okay, so this is a $3 drop in the price of corn, and that means that the minimum price is going to be $3 lower, and then, because we always draw parallel lines in economics, we're going to label that S1 plus the subsidy. Okay? And so what does that mean? Well, I'm going to clear this up in a little bit. But what happens, sorry for the bad writing there, what happens there is that now all of a sudden we are going to have a new equilibrium point, right? The subsidy pushed the equilibrium point down from P1, Q1 to this point here, which is a new equilibrium price that we are going to label P2, Q2, okay? And so the market is now functioning right here. Now the interesting thing is some very intriguing things are going to take place. And what you need to do as the economic student is then take that movement, that's one shift, right, and creating a new equilibrium of P2, Q2, and then understand what the implications would be for all of the stakeholders in the marketplace. And of course, the stakeholders are consumers, producers, the government, and society as a whole. So let's clean this diagram up a little bit. And what you have is the same shift in the supply curve that I just drew, but it looks a lot nicer. Okay, so what do we have? We have a supply curve of S1 minus subsidy, right? It's set up here, and now there are certain things that we need to glean, certain things we need to understand from this diagram, and therefore use that in our analysis. So, for example, we want to know what producer revenue was before the subsidy, what producer revenue was after the subsidy, what the government costs were for the subsidy, because the government's going to have to shell out money for this, what the consumer benefit is, and what the producer benefit is of what? Of the giving of a per unit subsidy to all of farmers in the United States for corn. And that is going to create, for sure, some welfare loss. Okay? Okay, so now what we need to do is to take a look at what happened on this diagram to further understand how we go about assessing all of these different elements and storylines that are embedded in this graph. Okay, let's remember one thing at the beginning. Before, and this is why the basic rule of 11, which is the basic supply and demand diagram, is so important. The story began, remember, at P1, Q1, right? So if we're going to try to figure out what the producer revenue was pre-subsidy, well, then it's going to be P1, Q1, right? This revenue box, P1, Q1, okay? What about post-revenue or post-subsidy producer revenue? Well, we got to think about this one. Remember, the shift of the curve outward moved the supply curve to there. But what's happening here? Well, consumers are getting a lower price, right? So if I'm a consumer last week and I went to buy corn, it would cost me P1. But if I'm a consumer this week, what happened? The price dropped to P2, right? But at this quantity, how much revenue is the producer making? Well, the producer is making P2, Q2 plus what? Well, for every quantity they sell at Q2, they get an extra $3. Wait a second. So what does that mean? It means that the producer at the Q2 level is getting the market price of P2 plus what? Plus the additional subsidy, which is additional revenue that they would earn. Okay, so if I take a look at that, the pre-subsidy producer revenue was here, right? P1, Q1. And then what happened? Then it shifted outward to where, you know what, I should do that in a different color. The pre-subsidy producer revenue was P1, Q1. The post-subsidy producer revenue, remember, it starts out here at Q2 and goes up to where? P3 and then over. So the producer revenue post-subsidy is equal to that box there. Okay? Now what about the government? Well, the government got involved and they offered a subsidy for anyone who was selling corn, and they gave them $3. So where did that happen? Well, you look at Q2 over here, and then you're going to go up $3 and over, and then down to the current market value. So the current price is P2, and then that's the new equilibrium plus this over there. So the government cost of the subsidy is going to be this box here. Nope. Is going to be this box here. P2, out to Q2, up to W, over to P3, and down. And you see all those coordinates right there, and I'm going to show you on the next slide, make this look all nice and cute and better. But if you just get an idea, that right there, that is the government subsidy, right? The producer revenue post-subsidy is blue, and I drew it in black, even though it should be purple, is there. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, what about the consumer benefit? How much did the consumers benefit as a result of this subsidy? Well, remember the story started off at P1, Q1, but then the price dropped to P2. So the consumer benefit of this subsidy was the drop in price from P1 to P2 all the way out to Q2 and then back up to the original equilibrium point. That is the consumer benefit. What about producers? Well, the producers remember, we're originally getting P1, right? But they're now getting P3. So the producer benefit is this line here up to P3 down to P1. Okay, so it's this shape right here is the producer revenue, right? This shape right here is the consumer, not the producer revenue, sorry, the producer benefit, right? The producer benefit is this red box right here, okay? And then what about the welfare loss? Well, welfare is a misallocation of resources, right? So we started off here at P1, and then the government got involved, and all of a sudden there were some producers of corn who should not have been producing corn who got into the marketplace. And as a result, this triangle, which is X, W, Y, this triangle right there, and I will fill it in with black, this triangle right here is, boom, the total welfare loss as a result of the subsidy. Okay? So now, if we clean that up a little bit, it'll look like this. Wow. All right. What just happened? Well, the one thing you can't see is this right here. Okay? So underneath here, the producer revenue pre-subsidy is in purple, but that was P1 out to here and Q1. So that is producer revenue pre-subsidy, right? Producer revenue post-subsidy, well, we know that's P3, Q2. And on the exam, that's just how you would want to say it. You would want to use these coordinates, okay? Now, what about the cost of the subsidy? Well, remember, the cost of the subsidy is the new equilibrium price up to the old supply curve, over to P3, and then down to the new price level that's a result of the subsidy. So the new equilibrium up to the old supply curve, or S1, all the way over to the price axis, P3, and down. That big square there is the government cost of the subsidy, okay? Now, what about over here? This should be, yeah, I should add P3 in here, right? So we go P2, or W, P3, Y, P2. This square right here, I'm missing a coordinate there. I should say P3, okay? What about the consumer benefit? Well, the consumer benefit, remember, they started off at P1, and then the price dropped. And so the area of this shape right there, P1, out here to the original equilibrium point, down to Q2, that is the consumer benefit. What about the producer benefit? Well, the producers used to get P1, but now they're getting P3, so it's the shape of this area there. And of course, the welfare loss is the shape, this triangle there is the loss of welfare as a result of the subsidy on corn. Well, there you have it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want more information on the subscriptions available for IB Economics students around the world, check out the description box below. All right, my friends, a reminder to be good to yourselves out there. Be kind to someone today, and we'll talk to you in a bit.